day 10 of our 30 days of PM challenge, where we are looking at content around product management and things that a product manager does as part of their daily life, and how they build products that scale and generate value to customers and grow the business as an outcome. So, a lot of days have gone by. We are at day 10 of our 30 days of PM series, where we are talking about things related to product management. And today, the topic of discussion is how do you talk to your users and what are the ways to get information and insight from the problems a customer is facing, or trying to ask them questions on a particular problem and build solutions that eventually the customers are paying and provides the customer end value and grows your business along the way. So to build these products, users are a core piece for you, because not having users means not having any customers using it, not having any feedback. There has to be a customer for you, or a user base that is actually looking for the problem you're trying to solve, right? So when you're in the initial stage of building a product, you need ways to talk to these consumers who you feel are the right target audience or the right personas that you've been building, or have an idea for a product to be built. And talking to these users is very important to get insights as to what are they actually doing in their day to day lives, how important the problem actually is to them out of all the things that they do and work on, and how you can solve and make their lives easier, right? So talking to users is really an art. It's about your conversation skills and how you make the best out of it. It comes naturally for some. For some, it takes a while to figure out the best way to approach a conversation to get the most amount of insight for a particular problem, right? And every customer, no two customers are same when they talk about a particular problem. There might be similar problems that have been requested, but the framing of the question or the problem or feedback is very different when you look at the requests that have come in, right? So there will always be scenarios where you have a similar request but framed in a different manner, which you have to figure out and bring them together based on the insights you have. And no two customers are same in terms of what they are requesting, the way they request, and the process of requiring a change, right? And this is definitely the case when you work in B2B organizations. You have customer base that is at different segments, right? Some probably are smaller customers, and some are probably Fortune 500 organizations that have massive teams, massive engineering effort, and things going on, and they're using your product for solving a particular problem. So, both these user segments, even when you look at the size of the organization in a B2B sense who has purchased your product, the way they request their questions or request for feedback is very different. And it's pretty important for you to understand where the user is actually coming from and build solutions for them, right? So we know that two customers are essentially the same in the way they ask for a query and how they build things. And user priorities also change over time, right? If I am talking to a Fortune 500 customer, they might have 10 things or 10 feature requests for you to work on, or they have feedback for you on 10 different items that are in the product. But you have to help or ask them questions as to what are actually their priorities, ask questions relevant to those priorities, and get insight to build a particular solution, right? And because these user priorities keep changing, the way they describe a problem also might change. And if, for example, a very high priority item has come up or has floated by from the customer, they'll provide they will also be thinking of the solution at hand. For example, we have a part of the platform where data is not being populated properly, right? So the customer might think of it as a request that needs to be added, where you need to ingest additional data as part of your integration with a third party platform, and provide that information for the user in the dashboard or in different areas of the product, right? Now, for you to just having this raw problem statement is not enough. You need to talk to your users to define, refine essentially, and get the best way forward to move and solve for their problem, right? And user always do have a potential solution in mind on how they would like, for example, a particular feature to work, because they have their own workflows and they have their own processes involved when using products, and they always request for their way of looking at a problem and their potential solution recommendation to be applied on your product, which might work out in a few cases, but that is not always the case, where you have to consider all the other factors that are at play and figure out if the best way for solving the customer request and their approach that they have recommended is the right way or not. And potentially, if it's the best way, you build that. Otherwise, you talk to them and explain them that I understand your problem. I have context of it now after asking you questions over the call, but I feel if we do it X way over your suggested way of doing it, we probably would have better support for you down the road, or probably as we scale with the platform, this will help you better optimize for your workflow, right? So there will always be these sort of interactions that you will have with your customers and your users over calls and these sessions. But think of these ways of talking to users or getting feedback from them as a way to collaborate and connect with them. It shouldn't feel like an interview to an end user, because everyone is busy in their own work, and you have to make the if you have, for example, a customer call scheduled and you want to get feedback on a particular item that you're trying to build, and the customer is also a potential user of that particular feature, talking to these customers in terms of asking how their workflow currently is and asking them to show their existing workflow, right? Or ways of how they currently do or manage part of their workflow, which they want to improve using your feature or using your product. Ask them for live examples, ask them for demos and walkthroughs of how they currently work on the problem and are trying to improve it, over just having text or over just having verbal communications, right? Because customers, you have to take their feedback with a pinch of salt. Not always are they right in what they think they are, and you as a product manager are also consulting them of firstly understanding the problem, then consulting them with options, and consulting them with the better approach, if for example that is available, to resolve their query, right? And it's very important to take feedback with a pinch of salt and not blindly trust what the user is telling, but also understand where the user is coming from and their priority. And if it is a genuine request that it is a complete blocker, for example a particular feature not being available, you address that as soon as possible. And during this situation, you don't have a lot of time to discover or look at options. You try to figure out the most simple solution that you can provide to the customer, which both engineering and other stakeholders can deliver to unblock the customer, right? So a lot of the times there are multiple factors at play when talking to your users, but always take their feedback with a pinch of salt, and make sure you understand the crux of the problem they are coming at you, right? So problems are always, they say something but they actually mean something else altogether, right? So it's important to figure out or get to the underlying root cause of the problem and try to solve for that. So we have a few resources here as well which talk about it. One of those is a quote from a product manager who talks to users continuously and has worked in big or startup organizations like Swiggy and Hotstar, and they have a very good quote that essentially on helps you understand the ways to talk to customers and how to take their feedback, right? So yeah, the quote goes, when speaking to strangers or consumers of your, application or product, it's tempting to ask questions, right? We can always ask them questions. What do you think of X feature? What do you think we should do for Y feature? If they don't really have feedback, they will still be obliged to give you some inputs on that, and that might not always work out in there, might not always be the right approach or solution. And if by chance you are fixated to the solution suggested or feedback given by a particular customer, which is not really a problem or a blocker to them, you might end up going a different direction entirely, which might harm you in the longer run, right? And make and potentially not make the product or feature scalable enough. So yeah, when talking to your customers, all do not just directly ask them questions on what do you think of X, Y, why do you think this feature of our product is not leveraged by you currently? Why do you not leverage X feature or Y feature? And why do you, I mean, why have you not adopted or started making use of some new integration or feature that has been added? Instead of asking these direct questions, you should probably look at underlying causes and ask them for their workflows and things around that. And yeah, so the quote goes, don't, it's tempting to ask the questions directly, try to avoid that, and use the answers as gospel, right? We try to build our own insights and try to, I mean, make decisions at our end using that gospel, which might not eventually work out. So the problem is consumers are lying to themselves and also to you. As I already told, it's best to observe. So the analogy goes for you to, if you are in customer calls getting their feedback and asking them questions, it's best to observe as if you're looking at an exotic animal in a zoo. It's not, it's a way for you to figure out, for you to look back and get some distance from the problem and the customer directly, and observe them and observe their behavior when they try to explain a particular problem, and take it from there, right? So the reason why we are talking to our customers is to understand the problem better, and directly asking them questions on a particular feature might not always work out the right way. So it's always important to maintain a little distance in terms of understanding of the problem statement, but always take things with a pinch of salt, as we already talked, right? And there are always ways for you and ways for you to make bets when thinking of solutions for particular problems that you're talking to customers. But yeah, always take things with a pinch of salt. Mm, and it's an art, really, and it's a way to communicate. And the flow, for example, the structure of your interview or the structure of your call can also decide on outcomes that you are trying to achieve, right? Because there are multiple ways to frame a question, and to frame a question just directly might not get you the real insight that you're trying to look for through the customer call. So it's always helpful to ask for workflows and look at what they're doing, right, over what they're saying. So by that we mean look at their workflow, how do they use the product in its current state, right, over them just telling that we don't like X button, or we want X button to move from the right to the left and things like that. It's better to ask them why do they want to move it, and show us a way in their current workflow that the button is harming or is becoming a problem over the long term, and take that feedback, whether it can be a UX update or whether it is just relocating the button to a different place. And to even make that decision, look at data, look at insight, look at analytics, look at other data that you can find out that is integrated with the platform, and make decisions from there. Maybe it's not even required, maybe the customer is not using the product right or the feature correctly. So it's always a tricky job when you are on customer calls. You always need to have like a plan of items, a series of questions and an action item prepared, but don't really be fixed on the steps or the agenda items that you probably have to ask questions, right? Make it more creative, be more, I mean, have it instead of it feeling like an interview, make it feel like a conversation that you're having with your friend. And ask for real life examples, ask for workflows, ask them to do a particular process or recreate the scenario that they were facing the problem in, right? And take that, and always try to collaborate and give them opportunities over integrated. With collaborating, you also get the advantage of potentially getting a little more bandwidth or time when you are on a time crunch to deliver enhancements, right? When collaborating, you can probably give them a few approaches to solve the problem, and give them some time to evaluate and work on that, and that gives you some time to also talk to your internal stakeholders and think of ideas to better solve the problem, right? So these are the ways how you can talk to your users. We have a few details that were provided in this article for our day 10 is for user interviews. They can be structured. You can have a series of bullet pointers and questions, which really is not the recommended way to do things. The semi-structured way would be to have loose ends, have an objective or an outcome planned, where for example you want to get clarity and get all the insights and data points possible from the user and why they are facing, and then be able to take that insight and build your solutions, right? So semi-structured interviews are, I mean, a good middle ground, so to say. And exploratory interviews are more sessions that you do over user interviews, and in these sessions you ask, these are more longer term or broader things that you are thinking of building in the future, and are trying to get insights on how they feel a particular addition or a particular feature addition would solve and look for within the platform, right? And exploratory interviews are just to uncover and get new insights or their opinion on, for example, a particular situation within the industry or addition of a particular feature. So this is more on getting insights and data and feedback or opinions from customers over actually getting to, I mean, a definitive output or a definite result from the interviews, right? So a lot of the times interviews are semi structured to begin with. Even for me, when I talk to customers, I try to have, when the agenda is decided already, I know what I need to ask and the problem from based on the context that was provided earlier. I frame a few questions and think of a flow of asking these questions, but I don't really stick to it. I make sure that I cover it in one way or other so that I get the insight I was trying to get out of the call, so that I can make a decision from there and build the right solution that is not just solving the current workflow but is scalable enough for future things that we expect to arrive, right? And when you're conducting these interviews, yeah, define the purpose and scope is always important. And before the interview, provide some context, provide an agenda, provide a list of items that you want to go through with the customer, right? And with interviews, if you are doing an interview with existing customers, you can make it semi structured. But when you're talking to or reaching out to new customers or potential customers or prospects, you always want to reach out to them in a positive manner. And we have also a template that you can see on the screen of how you can build introductions and build relationships with your customers, right? Like we saw yesterday from the Y Combinator video, the best founder and the best product managers essentially make it a point to have a very good relationship with the customers, and always, I mean, always plan and always make time to talk to customers for their insights and feedback, because they are eventually the ones who will be responsible and are using your product, right? And are also paying for it. So it's important to always have them on board when making bigger decisions on the platform and get their insights and their point of views. And we saw examples of Airbnb, and Airbnb also hosts, for example, open conference which is called the Airbnb Open, where they get customers who use the app and over a 3 day period ask them for insights, talk to them, just interact with them and get all the insight they can to plan out the future features that they plan to add to the product and also iterate from them, right? So it gives you a way to talk to them through the conference and also maintain these relationships with customers, and it doesn't really feel like having a typical technical interview, for example, right, when you are applying for jobs. So it is meant to be fun. It is meant to get all the insights possible and build the product from there. And talking to users always comes with experience. To begin with, in if you're working in the B2B SaaS space, talking to a larger Fortune 500 customer is much different and very different from talking to like an open source organization or a startup customer, right? So it depends. You also have to keep the persona in mind and what are their current problems, and understand their behavior and study the persona very well before getting on to the call. because that eventually ties up to how they work and use the platform and the product, and how you can then extract information out of them that can help you make decisions and calls. But yeah, this is about user research and how you can build, and things to keep in mind when doing user research. Always ask follow up questions, have clarifying questions, and always try to, for example, ask the customer. If you're asking a customer to explain their workflow and what is actually blocking them, try to summarize it yourself in the call itself, where and you have like a vote of approval from them within the call itself. Is, for example, you could say whatever the customer said, okay, from what I understand, you just mentioned X feature not being available on Y menu of the platform, but having a way for you to extract or provide the ability for you to use X within Y menu should probably solve your problem. And if the customer also thinks along the same line, they will have responses for you. Yes, probably that, or I think I could also live with having a button or having the menu also pop up on certain sections of the platform. So you will, it automatically becomes a conversation, and you can then synthesize your findings and get your learnings and insights from the call to make decisions. And always have like a constant loop of things going in, where the customer is also happy that they are being heard, and we can provide them with some value and keeping them happy along the way, and not just sidelining them and sidelining their requests. So it becomes a very good practice to talk to your customers weekly, and PM should and do spend a lot of time talking to customers to get their vote of confidence and get analysis of what they're trying. And it becomes very collaborative and doesn't really feel like you're doing user interviews or product discovery. It just becomes a natural part of your process of building and scaling products, right? So yeah, that's about user interviews. We have a few sample questions on basis of a few scenarios or few segments, problem statements you want to ask for those questions, and you can go through these here. So for example, when you are trying to gather user behavior, I mean, you could always look at analytics and data and heat maps of how the user interaction is happening. But when you go get to asking these behavioral questions, these are probably more under the exploratory category, right? So if, for example, you're planning a UI revamp of your platform, it's better to ask, I think we are planning for something which changes the look and feel of how dashboards work and make it more easier. And we are thinking of having like an option to select the date range in a calendar format for the entire dashboard, but also individually to the widgets within the dashboard. So the customer might come to you with the reply, so how will the hierarchy work, right? Which part of these filtering works or is being excluded? So you this becomes a conversation, and for you to also validate things with customers and get input and insights from them, and then iterate on your approach, right? And probably on the phase 2 of the implementation. So this is how you can ask them questions. You can also refer and ask them about process changes and things around that. And that is how uh, essentially we can build on how customer relationships are, talk to them, get the insight out of uh, them as well, and build the right solutions which eventually bring them value, help them grow, and also help you as an organization and a product mature within your cycle. And this is another important insight. And for example, if you are confused for on the insight, right, and which direction to take for, can be your startup, can be the feature you are trying to build, in this case just talk to multiple users face to face. We looked at Paul Graham yesterday mentioning that most of his advice is some version of talk to your customers, right? So eventually talking to customers is an art. You iterate and improve on it. Once the more you practice it, the better you get at it. So it's something that you have to practice and spend time on. It is not something that it helps to be naturally good at conversations, but talking to your users and customers on an ongoing basis gives you insight with multiple personas and how to deal with their problems and solve for those. And Jeff Bezos also has a similar statement where about talking to users, where he mentions about if you feel like data is inconsistent with what your findings are, there's something wrong with the way you are measuring it. And a lot of the time the anecdotes shared by customers and you discovering them internally or through insights externally is probably the right way over the data that you currently have, or the way you are measuring data or insights in particular. But always take them with a pinch of salt. But it's also helpful to look at these anecdotes, make some bets. And when building these features, a great way to look at it is trying to bet. Do you want to do I want to bet that this feature will be widely adopted? And that automatically makes you think about, okay, if I'm betting on a particular feature to do well, you automatically think of other improvements that can be added or additional context that you probably need to add a few more enhancements that can cover and to make it successful if you are betting on this feature and to do well, right? So that's one way to look at it. You can look at anecdotes. A lot of the times anecdotes are the way to do it, but I mean, in Apple's philosophy and with Steve Jobs as well, they don't really take user inputs or customer feedback, because customers might be lying to themselves and what they want. But you, as a product manager or a product lead, can make the judgment or calls for them, which you feel like are the best ways forward. Doesn't really apply to all organizations, because most of us in the B2B space are talking to customers, building specific requirements that cater to them and the wider user base and grow from there, right? But yeah, it's always important to get these insights and get these anecdotes, and always try to also bet on it if you don't have all the context or all the time to validate data, do the research and dig into other competitors and get insights from the market in a sense. So it's always helpful to bet, look at anecdotes, take things with a pinch of salt, and ask exploratory questions when you can, for broader term, longer term thinking and second order thinking. And also look at I mean, and semi structured interviews, right, with customers. But yeah, I think there are multiple resources. You can also refer to the Mom Test, which is a very great book, which essentially talks about how you can talk to your customers, learn if the idea is good or if they are lying to you, right? So this is another great resource. Talking about that, you have things around multiple scenarios where what with the types of questions you can ask to your customers. If for example you're looking for user behavior, and you can ask them questions on how do you normally get to, for example, that part, a section of the product. Do you just navigate there? Do you have it bookmarked somewhere? Do you have a link to another site that redirects you to the platform and things like that? So there are multiple of these behaviors and specific situation based questions you can ask to customers, but a lot of the time it is free flowing. And that's the best way to go about it and learn, but have the right questions at the right time and generate insights out of those. And yep, there are resources by Harvard Business Review, where why a good thing is to also not provide the user with multiple options or too many options, because the more options, the more confusing it gets for the user to choose and for you to also build. Try to get a balance of things and build the best solution possible, which not only solves the current problem but also can help in future situations that might arise, right? So always not have options, but not have too many options that it overwhelms the system and makes it harder to make a decision. And this article is very helpful, where I was talking that consumers are lying to you and why behavior driven research is key. So by behavior we mean how do they actually are using the platform. Look at session recordings of customers, look at how they're navigating through the platform, how the user journey from start to finish of using a feature is, right? So these sort of research can help you to validate the insight or just the surface level information that you have context of, and map it to the behaviors that you see through the data. And then try to ask questions that are clarifying these when you have these user interview calls with them, and build from there. So this is another great resource on Medium about this. And you have a video from Y Combinator again, which I link, where it talks about how good founders maintain connections to their users and directly talk to them instead of hiding behind like a no reply email or do not reply email or like a standard support or info email. The best founders talk to them directly. Can be LinkedIn, can be YouTube, can be just text messages over WhatsApp or your carrier. But yeah, the best founders and the best product people, when building products, talk to customers proactively and try to get the best insights out of them. And another great article from market research is uh, on the way Japanese do their market research, right? And the example they give about is Sony, and how the existing hypothesis when building the Sony Walkman was that consumers wouldn't really buy a tape recorder that did not record. But that eventually the founder of Sony decided to not have the ability to record into a tape using the Walkman, but just do playback. And it sold like hotcakes, and it's probably one of the most successful products Sony has built. And this essentially, this article talks about how they went, how they did their research, and how they took bets. And the concept I was talking about, trying to bet on features and see to get the most amount of insight and cover all your bases so that you are successful towards the end if you have made a bet on a particular feature. So yeah, it's always good to have things back of the mind and have these frameworks applied. And the best way to do it is to do it in real time. You cannot really just learning about multiple of these frameworks doesn't really work. Frankly speaking, you have to interact and put them into practice for them to show their effects. And it is not really a concept where learning a framework today and applying it tomorrow will exactly work and do the job for you. It increments over time, where a lot of the times, to as you grow and get more experience, these frameworks are automatically ingrained when talking to customers. And a lot of the times you make an hybrid framework or an hybrid approach to solve for a problem, where you might include the semi-structured interviews with also exploratory interviews and combine a series of questions that fall into both categories separate, and get your answer from the customers. So yeah, this has been about how you can talk to your customers and how to build relationships with them, and always trying to collaborate and connect with them over interrogate, right? So you always plan and have to target to collaborate over interrogate your customers, and it not feeling like an interrogation meeting but a collaborative meeting where the product team, I mean, is working hand in hand with customers, and making them feel heard, and understanding and capturing requirements the right way, and building solutions that eventually solve their problems. So yeah, this has been it about user interviews and how to talk to customers and users. We've talked about multiple resources and multiple frameworks, so do go through the entire recording here, and also the resources I link in the YouTube description and also our Twitter feed, where you can get more insights about product management and product marketing in essence. But yeah, for our 30 days of PM, this has been how you can talk to users, collaborate with them over interrogate, take their feedback with a pinch of salt, iterate, refine, and build solutions that scale and do the job for them. So yeah, we'll meet tomorrow on day 11 of our 30 days of PM challenge, and improve and learn more things about the product management space. So that's been it. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Thank you.